Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a Transition Educator series. Today, we sit down with Rachel Bodily. Rachel is a consultant at Toddle and a former educator turned entrepreneur. So, we hope that you tune in, turn it up, and listen to today's interview for why you shouldn't be sitting on the couch watching Netflix on a Friday night, the hustle and grind that it truly takes to make a transition, all the tips and tricks from a seasoned transition educator themselves. So why not kick your feet up, tell a friend, grab a cool beverage, and make sure that you turn the volume up and get ready to do this.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Leena Marie Saleh, the Edtech Guru. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me on this journey, for all the support that you give me, and for following along. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get ready to do this. Transition a reality. So with that being said, we'd love to hear a little bit about who you are and maybe a little bit of your teaching background before we figure out how you made the transition out of the classroom.
Yeah. So I grew up in California, and I started teaching just straight out of college. Started teaching at a public school, Coalinga Middle School in the middle of California, just any job I could get. Actually, back then, um, it was very difficult to find a teaching job. So this was 11 years ago, and it was hard. I applied for a lot of jobs back then. So I started teaching in a middle school in California, and I was traveling. I was actually backpacking 10 years ago during my summer break, and I ran into my Dutch husband in Laos. We were traveling, and then I decided to just stop my contract and move to the Netherlands. So I live here now in the Netherlands. My first year in the Netherlands, it was funny. I had a master's degree. But I couldn't find any work, right? Because I didn't have that international school teacher experience yet. So I was applying to all these international schools, trying to teach in English, trying to teach math in English. Couldn't find roles. So with a master's degree, I started working at a daycare. And the daycare was right down the street from the school I wanted to work at, the International School of Amsterdam. And one of the dads ended up being a teacher there. So I landed my dream job at the time working at the International School of Amsterdam, and that was 8 years ago. So I got to start teaching mathematics there, and it was, when I first moved to the Netherlands, I'd applied for all these international school jobs, but this was always the number one on my list. I don't know if it was luck or just me, getting out there and trying my best and just doing something, because I was rejected so many times. But it was a great career teaching. And I transitioned about a year and a half ago out of the classroom.
Such a cool story though, because when I also started teaching, there was no teaching jobs either, because it was like right around the economic crash. So it sounds like you were in the same time. You would apply for hundreds of jobs and there were no openings because nobody was retiring,
Right.
and there was nothing. It's hard to believe, I'm sure, for people now, but there were no jobs. You could not be
Right.
picky at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's funny though. I mean, it's actually, I don't know, quite motivating also to see your hustle, even to just get a job in another country, and the power of the play of networking, even just doing that as teaching. So I know you are no longer a teacher and you have successfully transitioned out of the classroom, but what is one of the reasons for why you decided to actually make the transition? Sounds like this was your dream job. So what made you decide to transition out of the classroom?
Yeah, I love teaching, and I think so many of us teachers do. Like, we love being with the kids, those aha moments. There's certain kids that you just sort of fall in love with and they become your buddies. And, so there's a lot of things I miss about teaching, but I think for me, there's a couple things I want to touch on. And I think for me, the first thing is that schools and education is so slow moving. It's just way too slow moving for me. I'm really driven. I'm really self-motivated. I love embracing change, and that's just always been in my nature. And that is not a school. So I think those two things really kind of clash. And I just continue to get frustrated by this fact that education is just not improving as fast as it should be improving. You see, especially working for a company now, I mean, we are like the speed of lightning compared to any school in the world. And I think I had a lot of hope working at a really incredible international school, a very future thinking, forward thinking, engaging curriculum.
but still I noticed the same type of culture, it's just a really slow culture. And then I got a chance to become a coordinator there too. And I thought, oh, this is how I can change things. And I got even more frustrated to see that, again, it was really slow moving, even more than I had known as a teacher. And I think at the end of the day, I became not only frustrated myself, but I was frustrated for the kids, seeing that the kids had to learn and stick their nose in a book and how boring things were for them. And that we had to assess them 16 times a year. And it was just too much for me. So that's kind of the first reason I left. And I think the second reason I left is really a reflection on my childhood. I grew up without a lot of good adult guidance, mostly not like a lack of from my parents. And I think at one point, one of my teachers said to me, I was really close with him, and he said, "You'd be a great teacher. You should do it. You get great vacations." And then I just did. And I just became a teacher. So I never had that time to really process, who am I? What do I want? What would I maybe be good at? And I didn't really understand myself well at that time enough or have the guidance enough to make a better decision.
How funny. You get great vacations. This is why you have to become a teacher. Or what was the other one? You'll get a great pension. Like, okay, that's a long time. You got to wait for a great pension and these vacations.
Yes. I mean, I do miss the 14 weeks a year. I'm not going to lie. We're pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. The vacations. Yeah, they definitely are. I know my sister's still teaching and she gets these breaks and I'm like, oh, that's so nice. I wish I had as many breaks as you, I think that's a good, background to kind of set the, kind of set the tone of where you probably headed now and probably a lot around, it sounds like you were a teacher, but then you were also seeking other opportunities for growth within the organization. Sometimes we face frustration, especially in schools, because they do move literally like grandmas. Like, I think they just don't move fast in any place in any country. And I think it's nice to see, in the Netherlands that you're facing the same sort of things, the assessment, the different stressors that teachers are facing. And it's not just like an isolation thing that just happens here in America or wherever. It's literally a global phenomenon that's happening for teachers and just the stress and things that are happening because in such a really globally broken system, really.
Yeah.
All right. So you made the transition out of the classroom we talked about why you made the transition out of the classroom and kind of looking for things. So it sounds like you were, really learning who you were and those types of things. So now that you have made transition, do you want to tell us a little bit about the transition you made and maybe some steps that you took to get there?
Yeah. So it was about a year and a half ago, as I mentioned before, that I officially quit my job. It was about a year and a half of thinking about it. And now what I do is I immediately started a tutoring company, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to make any money. I'll just see what happens. And I started tutoring a few students online. Before COVID, I never thought I'd have an online tutoring business. But then after COVID, I'm like, of course you can. Of course you can have an online tutoring business. So I started that, and I have a very sort of a niche mathematics tutoring company that's specific for the curriculum that I used to teach, an international baccalaureate curriculum. And then I was at an educational conference here in the Netherlands. I was volunteering for it because I thought, what am I going to do with my life? And I was put on to help out at a session for an LMS called Toddle. And I looked on their website and I saw this career and I thought it defined me as a human. It was like project management, events, getting content created, working with educators. And it was everything about me. And I thought, I'll just apply for it. But I hadn't even heard of the company before that. So I got the job. So I consult at Toddle, and I, about 5-10 hours a week, I run my business on the side. And then I work the rest of the time. I work pretty much a full-time role at Toddle.
What I like about that story is you volunteering at the conference and you see this, company, you look online and you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I need to be doing. I think oftentimes educators, and we'll talk about the steps that you took to, make the transition out of the classroom. But I think sometimes educators are like, oh, I'm just going to go after these big ed tech companies that they know. And I think what you just said perfectly, doing content creation, doing project management, doing all of these things, sometimes
I think the smaller startup companies are really overlooked, but they teach you so much more than you would ever learn in one of the really big ed tech companies as a first starting jump.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that, and I can totally agree with that. I mean, already my job description in 1 year is much different than what I was doing a year ago. And it's cool. Like, it's so cool to be a part of a startup and learn alongside what they're doing. I mean, it's fast paced. It's a lot of work, but it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And I think rewarding too. I think because it's moving fast. Like, it's not just like it's not moving at a grandma's pace. There are things that move that way, but overall, like, you know, you're being heard. You're being able to actually shape something, and I think that those are all really, I don't know. As educators, that's what we want to do, right? We're shaping our students, so we also want to shape the work that we're doing post transition.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll talk about the steps that you made to kind of make that more of a reality for you.
Yeah, and I think it's looking back now, you know, it was scary for me. It wasn't an, oh, I'm just going to quit tomorrow. No, of course not. Of course not. It was scary. It was frightening. There were 3 months where I had zero income, and that frightened me. And it also made me feel low. You know, it wasn't a nice time, and it wasn't a nice situation to be in. But I think I was in a fortunate situation to have a partner, a fiscal partner. And I think that really helps. You know, so for people who don't, I can understand why it could be really scary and really frightening. That for me was my rock really in this. And my husband and I had already been reading a lot about the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, really more about spending less, being really cautious about your spending. You know, and then we started to read too about how can you actually get more financial returns by starting your own business too. And so that was intriguing to me and to us and to him. And then the housing market went crazy, and we had this really beautiful, nice, we sort of had our dream home, and we decided, let's get rid of the dream home. Let's move into a small house and let's live off of one salary. And we did it. And everyone thought we were nuts. You know, we'd just gotten the house. We'd lived there a couple years, but we just thought, this is our chance. Let's take it. And so we were able to figure out our finances. They call it the big three, right? And in the FIRE movement, and that's the house. Figure out, you know, how can you make your housing cost less? How do you make your car cost less, your transportation? And how do you make your groceries cost less? And we spent a lot of time reading books. We did a lot of research. We spent a lot of time on Excel spreadsheets, you know, over and over again, just trying to figure out how can we make it work with one salary. And then we did. And then I quit right away. So that was helpful. And there was a lot of work that we put into that for me to be able to actually put my papers down and walk away.
Yeah. And I think that's a different perspective than we probably have heard from other people. And that's why I think sharing people's transition journey is so important, because it literally never looks the same for anybody, and everyone's journey is different. And I think it's important to be able to see all aspects of that. So I appreciate you sharing that story too, because I think it's just important. And selling your dream house can be big, and people are going to think you're crazy probably for even wanting to leave the classroom, because you get great vacations.
But, a great pension.
You know, it's important to have people around you that support you, whether you have a partner who can do that, or you just have some people that can be your rock during that time, because it can get low, it can get lonely, can be overwhelming. And it looks different for everybody. And I think that's the important thing to know, is not one single journey is a mirror of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to note too that my application process was also long and daunting. You know, it's not that I found a job on Toddle and I got it. No, I also probably applied for another 80 to 100 jobs in the middle of that too, consulting roles everywhere and anywhere, you know, so it wasn't just, a quick, I'll do this, I'll do that, and it's finished.
Yeah. And for your online, you know, tutoring business, because you mentioned there was a couple months where you might not have had an income. So did that take what were some steps that you took to kind of get that kicked off the ground too? Because that's also a hustle in itself, doing your own thing and then also consulting or doing that sort of thing on the side too.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's crazy because you can learn anything you need to learn on YouTube, right? Like I always was really frightened by this idea of having your own business. In America, it's called an LLC. You know, here in the Netherlands, I had to learn everything in Dutch. I had to read it in Dutch, which was even worse. You know, my Dutch is good, but it was daunting. But again, it was a matter of learning. It was a learning curve. And now I'm through it and I'm over it. And it actually doesn't feel that hard now to have my own business. But the first year felt hard. I learned all about the tax implications. I learned about, you know, how do you even get the LLC? How do you do it all? So yeah, I think just diving into the YouTube videos and asking people for help. And there's actually so many free, I don't know about in America, but I know here in the Netherlands, there's a lot of free resources put out by the government on, you know, how do you start your own business? What are the steps you need to take? You know, what is marketing? Like that kind of thing is available here as a free resource. I'm sure you can find it in America by a quick Google search too.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of upskilling was needed in
Yeah.
order to kind of make yourself successful. And I think that's an important part and often overlooked part, I think, of the journey. I think people just think like, oh, you step outside the classroom and you apply and you can do all those things. But if you can show that you're also upskilling in the process, it's also like a big benefit to you because one, you're going to know what you're talking about. And people aren't going to just be like, when they ask you a marketing term, let's say even something simple like B2B or B2C, you know,
Yeah.
you know what they're talking about because I know I didn't do that when I first started and people would ask me a question. I'd be like, oh yeah. And I go home and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not at all what I was thinking it was or talking about. And so I'm definitely not getting this job. So it's important to be able to make sure that you also know like those terms. But, you know, marketing is a beneficial skill set to have for anything that you do. And essentially, when you're job seeking, you are marketing. That's exactly what you're doing. You're marketing yourself for why they should bring you onto your business. So I think that's a really unique and underlooked part of any process.
Yeah, I think, and you know, we've talked about this before together, the two of us, but like it's about the hustle. You have to stop watching Netflix on your Friday nights, and instead of watching Netflix, you have to sit behind your computer for 4 hours. And I'll be honest, that's pretty much all I've done the last year and a half is like keep learning things, figure things out, try new things, ask people, grab a virtual coffee with someone on LinkedIn. Whoa, I love what you're doing. How do you do it? How do you make it work? Talk to other self-employed people, all of those things, you know, and just diving in and trying anything and everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. It is the hustle. And I think even when you do land a job, you don't stop that hustle period. Like you still continue to do, I still do it. I'm still reaching out to people. I'll see someone do something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew like how you were doing that or, you know, that sort of thing. And I think you become less timid the more that you do it. Like the more, you know, some people will not answer you and some people will. And it's okay. It's not a reflection on you and what you're doing. It's just, you know, we're all busy, but I think it's important to keep leaning in as much as you can.
Yeah. And leaning into those things that you care about too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked about this before we were filming with you all, but I'd love to know what life has been like for you post-transition. So you've transitioned, you have your business, you're also consulting at Toddle. So just sharing a little bit about what your life looks like now.
Yeah. And I think, well, the first thing I'll say is I was really nervous about working from home, like full time. I'm fully remote. And even my husband was nervous about it. He's like, you're such a social being. Like, how are you going to handle that? I love it. I love wearing my sweats. I love like putting the wash in, you know, being able to do the dishes real quick here and there. So that's my favorite thing. No, but when I talk about me as a professional, I will say I feel, you know, I used to feel like there was just a certain limit to my growth as a teacher. Like, okay, I could become a coordinator. Okay, then maybe become an administrator. I wasn't really wanting to do that though, but I felt really limited. There was only a certain growth I could have with that. And now I really feel like the growth, there's no limit to it. And I feel pretty challenged and motivated most days. I have a lot more energy to learn new things and kind of like I just mentioned before, just dive in the pool and like try anything and everything. And that kind of mindset is just fun and try things differently. And like, oh, that Google ad, I don't think that worked. Like, oh, okay, I'll try it a different way. You know, or the way I wrote that that referral mailer. I don't really love that. Maybe less chat GPT, maybe more of me. Like, like all of those learning curves that you have to make. I love the flexibility in my schedule too now. Just making my own schedule is amazing. It's worth gold. Not having, I used to commute to 45 minutes each way, sometimes an hour with traffic, and like those extra 8 to 10 hours a week, like I can make a lot of money in that time, and I think for me, on the sort of more emotional side of things with teaching, I think the best thing I've experienced is just not having to deal with so many other humans, because I think that's what really burns teachers out, is that you have to not only deal with 120 students, but you have 240 parents, and you have colleagues, a lot of them, and they're all unhappy, and you have admin, and I think not dealing with all of the emotions. Of course, I've got my colleagues now. I've got a group of like 15, we're all women actually on our team. It's pretty cool.
So nice.
Yeah. And I also have 9 people that tutor with me, which are fabulous, wonderful educators, but it's different because then I'm just dealing with the people I choose to deal with, and to an extent, of course. But it's just, wow, like being in front of a class is just so emotionally draining. And I never had realized that before. So that's nice. It's nice to have more time for me and more time to check in with my emotions and not have to teach 7 hours straight.
Yeah, I think you hit on something, actually. I don't know if I've chatted about it or have, or who knows, but I think you touched on something is, being in front of students is a lot. And I have tried to iterate this, with coworkers and things like that, about why teachers, just why is the job so hard? And it's hard because you never get time to think. There's no you think time. Like you don't get to like process or really reflect, or, you're just moving. You have to move from this to this to this to this, and you're managing so many things, whether it's a kid was sick and their parents sent them to school, or they had a really bad night's sleep, or something, they forgot their lunch. I don't know. It could be anything, but they can become really traumatic things building up over time every single day. And then managing your colleagues who are equally just miserable most of the time. It's rare that you find an educator that's like so excited about what they're doing.
Or that's their second year in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that when you step away from the classroom, whether you are driving into work or you're, sitting with your colleagues, the things that you're thinking about, you're not thinking and managing all of these other things that you didn't even realize you were managing until you take a step back and you're like, oh my gosh, my brain doesn't hurt. I don't need to take a nap every single day, although you can if you want to. But you don't. It's not needed, right? Like you don't need as much caffeine. You don't need as much like things to just survive. Like you get to thrive, and I think that's an important part too.
And I don't know if you were like a typical. I assume that you were probably a similar teacher to me, and in that I'm very empathetic. I really, if someone's feeling an emotion, I feel it too. And it was hard to share the emotions of 120. I usually taught grade 8. That's when 120 13-year-olds.
There's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And they deal with a lot, and then they bring it to you, and then you carry it and you hold it. And I remember, sometimes I would lose sleep, most nights, because I'd be thinking about them and how I could help them and how I could help them thrive. And, you're just carrying the weight of them, and it never really goes away until you get a new group of students, and then it happens each and every single time. So so that empathy piece I think is important that we often don't think about. And I love that you say now you have time for you, because we don't as teachers. Teachers often do not put themselves first. It's just not the nature of the business. It's just not. It's you put yourself last, and you put everyone else first.
Yeah. And I don't want to be contradictory, because I said that I work every night, because it's true, I do.
Yeah.
And I don't have that time for me yet, but I do have the time, like you're saying, those little micro minutes in the day where I can breathe, I can go for a walk, I can shut my computer, I can say, all right, I can't work anymore. I get to, that flexibility of my schedule is really nice. And then hopefully in a couple years, when my business is doing really well, then I'll have a lot more me time, really, really me time, less work.
Yeah, I think my guess is, though, you're probably like me, and you'll probably still have the work piece, because it's exciting, and it I don't know, gives you energy, which it does.
We'll have to do this again in 10 years.
Yeah, I'm like, check in. How are you doing? Is your workload less?
You know, to do the check-in podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I just really enjoy hearing people's stories and how they've done the things and what they look forward to and what are the things that are bringing them joy as they've gone throughout this process, because it is tedious, it is time consuming. And I think something that's unique about your story is, one, you're running your own like business and, you know, side hustle and doing all of that, but you're also consulting for a company. So you're getting to see kind of two sides of a story. And I think oftentimes a lot of teachers have fear with consulting. And, you know, it just brings them like I don't know, like they want more of that consistency piece. But
Mm-hmm.
I think you should think about it. Like I do. I just don't think anyone should just run from the consulting piece.
And I think, you know, that financial freedom led me to feel more at ease with it, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were to pick up the phone right now, we were in a big, I don't know, maybe we're in a big group of teachers and we're trying to share our stories. What are some tips that you would like to leave our audience with for success that you had, or just things to kind of make their transition easier, more of a reality? Could be some truths, hard ones if you need to share those too. But just, you know, what are some things that should be top of mind as they go throughout this process?
Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear if these are similar with other people. I try not to watch too many episodes because I wanted to make sure I told my own story. But I did come up with three things. And I think the first thing is, if you can somehow in your schedule, in your life, free up more time just to figure out what you want and get that vision, and to start trying to do a little bit more of what you want, whether it be your own business, whether that be working on your resume, whether it be like reaching out to coaches like Leena to have a chat, whether, right, like just anything on the side, just to give yourself more time to do that. So if there's a way that you can work part-time for your school, like 3 days a week, and you can financially manage that too, do it. Just do it and see how you feel. You know, see if not working on Mondays and Tuesdays is nice. See if you like that, or see if you actually miss the full-time classroom gig. You know, and I think so you need that time. You need time to start diving into this and thinking about it. Because if you're still just living your old life, nothing's going to change. You know, if you continue doing the same thing you've been doing, you're going to keep hitting your head against a wall. And then I think the second thing, which is very scary and very difficult for people, but if you can look at your finances and figure out a way to downsize, or to figure out a way to reduce the financial burden of your big three, so your house, your car, your groceries, just do it. Because, you know, now I'm in a very different situation. And I think when the financial burden goes away, when that being scared to quit because you aren't going to have enough to eat or feed your kids, if you have children like me, if you can take that feeling away, you'll feel so much more free to do anything you want. You know, and my husband and I talk about this all the time. If I want to quit tomorrow, quit my business, I could just do that. And I could just go work at a cafe. Like, I've always kind of wanted to be a bartender. So, you know, and that's just that feeling, knowing that it's your choice. It's not your boss's choice of what you want to do. So that's the second thing. I know it feels scary. It sounds scary. Not only downsizing things, but also just really looking at how you're spending. Because, you know, I've lived in America before. Americans are bad at spending. Americans spend a lot of money. And I can compare that to Dutch people, because Dutch people are very frugal. So even if you can look at your spending and see if there's a way that you can adjust that as well. And I think the third thing, and we've mentioned it before, is like the hustle. But I said, just get out there and like do something, whether it's like working at a coffee shop or working at theater, just anything, right? Volunteer. Like, say, hey, I'll take on that consulting gig for 2 hours a week, and then don't watch Netflix on Thursdays and just pick up that volunteer gig. There's a lot of companies that would love to have you volunteer for them. So, and ask people like, hey, can I come and help you in your role for a few months? I don't know. I might say yes to that. Like,
yeah,
reach out to me. Yeah. Yeah. Take up a random like side gig or a side job, go to conferences, like get out there, just do things, get a low cost. Like, I know you've spoken about this on other podcasts that you've done, but like a low cost Google certification just try it, see if you like it. Maybe you hate it, quit, do the other certification then. But I just think if you sit behind your computer and you're just applying for jobs over and over and over again, you're not going to get anywhere. That's not how I got any of the jobs that I really love the most. It just doesn't work like that, so I think it's just the hustle and get out there and try something. Just try it. And you might hate it. Okay, you hate that. Try something new. That kind of attitude and mindset, I think, is going to be really important.
Yeah, and I think those are all really great tips, because I always share that too, like making sure you have like a strategy, or you just know what you want to do. Because if you start just throwing things at the wall, you're going to be lucky if anything sticks. Like it just isn't how it works. Like you don't sit down to bake cookies and you don't have any of the ingredients. You have to make sure that you're really strategic about what you're doing, because you can really burn out and your cookies can really taste gross. So like it's really important, that you have those types of things that you are doing. And I think also, taking a financial look, I think a lot of times teachers are like, oh, well, I'm this close to my pension or whatever. You'd be surprised if you met with a financial planner, how much more you could probably even net from things that you're doing and, those types of things. So I think I haven't heard anyone really talk too much about the financial piece. And I think that that's important. And doing a side hustle, I always was bartending, or I was serving on the side, or doing certain things. And I said that if I did, and I just set my mindset, I was like, I'm going to quit this year. And if I have to, I don't know, I'll Uber drive. Like, I don't know, but something to keep myself sane and kind of keep myself in that motivated direction. And I think taking a no thank you taste of classes and certifications and different things like that is really important. And it could be networking. I've worked with a couple of teachers who are, pretty big influencers in this space and things. And they came to me and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, you have to go to a conference, talk to the people at the thing if you're really interested in working with them, and just start networking with them, because those are all important pieces of the puzzle.
Totally. Yeah.
And sometimes people get lucky. They just fling it and they just are the lucky ones.
But I don't know.
And very diamond in the rough, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes people just get luck of the draw, but that's not usually the story for most people.
Yeah. I think, just listen to yourself and try to really step back and reflect and question, what do I really want? If you do go to a conference and you end up not liking it, you can leave. If you start a volunteer gig, well, you can end it early. That's fine. Like be willing to say no also to things. Don't feel like you have to commit anywhere, just get out there, put your feelers out, and listen to yourself, and you'll figure it out.
I totally agree. Well, Rachel, I've really enjoyed this time prior to filming and now filming with you. And thank you for staying up late for us as well.
That's all right.
We really appreciate it. And you being, vulnerable and sharing your story. If somebody wanted to find you or maybe connect with you and, have more of that virtual coffee chat, where is the best place for them to connect with you?
Just on LinkedIn. And I think you were going to put that in the notes. So you can go to my LinkedIn profile and add a note, maybe that you saw me on Leena's podcast, because then I'll maybe actually respond to you. But yeah, it'll be great to hear from some of you and, just hear your story as well. And I'm excited to see what happens to education. Like, something's going to change, right? We are on the cusp of something. It's got to change. Yeah.
We're in a hard place for sure. And so, connect with both of us, share your stories, tell us what you loved about this interview too. And as always, we will see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much. You've made it this far. We are so thankful that you're here. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, comment below, and join us for all of our next videos. Thank you so much for joining us as we disrupt education together. See you guys soon. Bye, everybody.